here. And hopefully the people that I'm not able to see, at least I think there's just one person who's not able to see the PowerPoint. Um, Hopefully she should be able to see it in that in the recording. So I want to welcome you all to what is the first of our process consultation tools and techniques of Dr. Ed Schein. I think this is promised to be a very exciting study group, but just a few pointers because we are joining voice over IP for the most part. Don't expect a totally crystal clear recording. Sometimes what can happen is you can have background noises and all that, and some feedback loops if somebody's hearing this through a computer. So that's why I muted everyone, and we'll do the best we can to clean up that recording before we send it to you. But just please bear with us. So in this is the first time I'm using the GoToMeeting platform. In the past, I've used WebEx, but we were having some technical issues with people getting thrown out of the meeting, etc., a number of times, and so I stopped using WebEx totally, and we've switched over to GoToMeeting. Hopefully, this will be a better platform. I've heard a lot of nice things about it, so let's see how this works out. But this particular platform does not have a um, a raise hand icon. So when you have to speak, as I'm doing the presentation, and you want to sort of like ask a question or make a comment or just give us a feedback, you'll have to type it in the chat box, and I'll be multitasking. I'll look into the chat box, and then I'll open the mic over to you so that you can then talk and say whatever you want to say as part of the meeting. Um, I'm sure I'm not sure, but I'm assuming that most of you at least have browsed through the link that I sent you in the email message. That was the first message I sent you, in which I provided a link to our website where there's some information there on process consulting, and also there was a link um, to a entire ebook that can be downloaded um, of Dr. Edgar Schein, and hopefully some of you have been able to do that. Uh, Seema, I see you're on. Can you hear us, Seema?
Yes, I can.
Okay, wonderful. Seema, I can hear you too. Great. Okay, good. I'm just going to mute you, Seema. Right now, we are doing a recording here. So, like I was saying, a link was provided by Jayesh Sampath, in which you can actually click on that and download the entire ebook of Dr. Ed Schein on process consultation revisited. I think it was very gracious of Dr. Schein to offer that entire book for free. So if I were you, I would definitely do that. The link has been provided. It's also on the Facebook group, so you can use it from there. But you'll see it in my email that I sent you. Um, just before we get into this a little bit further, I just want to see if just to sort of get your feet wet with what process consultation is. We before we get into what process consultation really is, I think it's important to understand what it is not. So rather than me reading all this, it's in front of you, the slide. As you can see, it's not a technology or set of interventions, not a model for non-directive counseling, certainly not an occupation or a full-time job, and not unilateral advice or pontification. um, So, so I just wanted to hear a little bit from you guys, just to get a feel for how many of you are already familiar with Ed Schein's work to some extent. I mean, other than the fact that you've all heard of Ed Schein, you cannot be talking about organizational culture without seeing some citations on Ed Schein. I mean, he's really the gentleman who's done a tremendous amount of work on organizational culture. So, so I just want to get a feel for uh, you know if you've engaged with this work, if you're immersed in the work, have used that as part of your um, part of your professional work. It would be nice if somebody can just say something to that. How about I unmute Anna? Anna, if you want to say something about your work with Ed Schein, go ahead. Anna?
Sorry, I had it muted on my end too.
Yeah.
I just had my familiarity with him comes through the Society for Organizational Learning and work that I've done through SOUL over quite a number of years,
Mhm.
and meeting him, participating in some things through the Systems Thinking in Action and SOUL conferences.
Okay. So for those of you that are not familiar with the acronym SOL, SOL, that is Society for Organizational Learning. Is that right, Anna?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
So I think he was the founding member of SOL, right?
with Peter Senge and a number of others. Yes,
Right. Okay.
that
Wonderful.
was at MIT.
At MIT, that's correct. Just some tremendous, and the way that website has taken off, it's really amazing. The membership it has, and just a very robust body of work that's being done there. That's really terrific. So thank you for
There was
sharing
a
that.
small group of us here in Washington, D.C., working for the federal government in several different agencies
Uh huh.
who became very active with Peter and the Peter Senge and the Society for Organizational Learning, and essentially brought the federal government to the table as a part of that community. And it was through that context
Uh huh.
that we also became engaged with many of the other thinkers and really bright minds engaged in this work.
Okay. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else want to add something about Dr. Schein's work? Uh, okay, if you just want to type your message there. Okay, how about I unmute Pamela and say, Pamela, you unmuted. Can you talk, Pam, and just let us
Yes,
know?
I can. Can you
Wonderful.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Fine. Welcome aboard, Pam.
Okay. Good morning to everyone and to you, Anil. Yes, I mean, my experience with Ed Schein in the at Bethel as a member of NTL at that point, a new member in Bethel, Maine. I had the opportunity to sit in a session, a morning seminar with Ed Schein and Dick Beckhart. And Dick was sort of getting on in years. And at that point, the focus, it was what was known at that point as a community lab. And they came in to do a session around process consultation, and which wasn't a new idea at that point, but it was just a phenomenally influential thought set of thought leaders on just the direction of process consultation into all areas of organizational development, especially those that are closely tied to the NTL brand or model, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So, but it was a community of learners, of basically organizational psychologists, organizational development consultants, human relations facilitators.
And Pam, would you just want to share with the group just a little bit about your professional background, just a few words about where you're located,
Sure.
what kind of work you've done?
Yeah, I live in New York City, and I do two things. I teach and I practice organizational development, organizational consultation. My background started out in the 70s with at Yale University in their training consultation division, which had a focus at that point. It was a merger of a program that was a merger between the School of Business and the Department of Psychiatry. And so at that point, the Tavistock model was a growing and wonderful model that was being championed by that department, and I had the opportunity to not only be a learner and student, but also working for the university in the training and consultation division. And from there, I came into New York City and worked at various, mainly in the healthcare industry at NYU Medical Center, and in the area of what they called at that time community health, working with practitioners around trying to use some of the principles of organizational development. We're working with not only patients and other doctors, but also with the community at large.
Mm-hmm.
And presently, I teach a course through the Women's International Leadership Program at CEPA at Columbia and International House on leadership. And I've been working with them for a long time.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Pam. I appreciate it. Does anybody else also have anything to say? If you just put your okay, let me see if I can give it to Anuradha Prasad. Okay. Yes, Anuradha, would you like to add something to that?
No, not to add as such, but just to say that though I have never met him, not having been to the US, but have heard about his ideas through so many colleagues who have been in his programs and have read his book, and especially his understanding and explanation of what helping really is and how all of us are in the helping profession. That's what
Yes,
really influences me.
absolutely. And what I really, I think what I found very, very refreshing, Anuradha, about Ed Schein's work is the 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 pains that it takes to simplify something rather than complicate things.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely,
we
absolutely,
are all guilty of sometimes.
absolutely. And yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
whenever I am in doubt about what I am doing and really blaming myself for why this thing didn't go right, and then when I read Shine's book, and then I realize, oh shit, this is what I have done. I should not have done this.
exactly. It is just totally amazing to me that
Yeah,
the
yeah.
sometimes I feel that he has oversimplified everything, which is so wonderful. You know,
And so humble. It
oh,
sounds so humble.
he is one of the
He
most
sounds
humble.
really.
Yeah, well, I haven't met
Yeah.
him face to face, but he's one of the thought leaders that shares
Yes.
on a leaders page at
Yes.
Orgdine, and so he's just an amazing influence. And I thought that this would be something that would really, give people, even though it's for some who've been engaged in this kind of work for a long time, it may appear very rudimentary. Uh,
But can I just add something, Anil?
sure.
Hello. Though,
Yeah.
though it sounds so simple and he writes so simple, but to me, process consultation is the most difficult thing for OD.
I totally agree with you. The more simple is it, the more messy it gets.
The most difficult it is.
Most difficult because
Yes.
we have this halo around our heads as consultants, and then we take. I'll tell you, I've been guilty of that too, as all of us at some point. To be, it feels so wonderful to be elevated to the stature of the expert. you know,
Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
client.
Yeah.
It's such a feel good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
And
thank you
then
for
when you're a
sharing.
process, yeah, and when you're a process consultant, you're so simple, and then people feel that you really don't know much. So that's why you're being so simple.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that feedback.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Let's see. Okay, so does anybody else? Balaji, you just joined. Would you like to say something about process consultation?
Yeah, hello Anila, hello everybody. Yeah, I think sometimes as organization practitioners in driving change, I always thought like we actually complicate things. But when we go back and read Shine, then we actually find know things can be done in such a much simpler way. So that's
Yes.
been my experience with the Shine's work.
Yeah, yeah. And it is to the credit of Dr. Schein, it is to the credit of Dr. Manfred Ketz de Vries, two people that I know and have known personally as mentors, but no, I haven't met them both. But they both are into more. I mean, they don't compromise on rigor, but they're definitely in trying to make things simplified rather than get them more complicated. So, does anybody else want to add something here before we move on? How about you, Terry? Terry?
Yeah, I first learned about Ed Schein's work in my master's degree at Fielding,
Uh-huh.
and I think it's just the gold standard of culture work and process work. So I think it's great that you've created this forum for us to revisit it if we have seen it before, or to explore it in a more a deeper way. And I'm looking forward to hearing people's experiences with it,
Yes,
and how they've applied it in their own work.
me too. And that's one of the reasons. And I'm sure we've all sort of heard about this and done this and incorporated this in our work. But it's always nice to. It's a good refresher for us to go back and look at some of the things that we may have missed, and especially from the standpoint of others. So it's a good opportunity to learn a little bit more about this work. So thanks for sharing that, Terry. All right, so let's just move on. So let's look at what is process consultation really. Um, Ed Schein, if you read part of his work, he calls it a philosophy of helping and a technology or methodology of how to be helpful. So the entire theme that Ed Schein takes in the realm of process consultation is around helping. We are all in the helping profession. I mean, regardless of what we are doing, we are in a way helping. And helping may seem so simplistic and so easy to understand, but really, helping can be very complex. If you see that help is not easy to give and even more difficult to accept when offered. Okay. Um, you know, and Anna Dorshow writes here, Shine is credited with coining the term corporate culture around 1966. Wow, that's going back a while. Okay, so he's clearly into the realm of corporate culture. I mean, he's done tremendous amount of work in that. But if you just look at helping as an expression, and if you just close your eyes and think about the times that you've tried to help people because either they asked for help or you identified a situation where they might need help, and what kind of response you got to that. Okay, especially when someone's not asked for help, but you're seeing a situation where they may need your help and you're offering the help, and what kind of resistance comes up to receiving the help. I mean, it may seem very simple, but I think it's a very complicated thing. So if anybody wants to share on that, on the helping part, yeah, sure. Vanita, just 1 minute. Let me open it to you. Yes, Vanita, go ahead.
My my experience is that that when I sense that somebody needs the help, is not really directly offering it. It's just kind of just being there, and
Hmm.
being there, the resistance doesn't come. The person himself or herself kind of reaches out.
Uh-huh. Nicely put. And Terry writes, most people will resist help unless they are desperate. Wow. That's a good one. Hey, I've been there when I thought I didn't need the help. But when I really got desperate, I reached out to somebody and say, hey, you know what? I'm sinking. Help me out. So, Terry, you want to say more about that? Let me just unmute you.
Sure. I think it's interesting, in coaching school, that we talk about the differences between consulting and then in coaching. And I think it's really interesting how most people would resist, if you're trying to tell them what to do, right? It's unless they're really desperate and at a point of feeling like they don't know what to do. And
Yeah.
so it's an interesting idea. This concept of process consultation,
Hmm.
I think, addresses that concern and directly.
Hmm. Hmm. So as Ed Schein is saying in his work, an insight is needed into the dynamics of the helping relationship. I mean, he has very specifically devoted, I think, a whole chapter to the creating the insight into the dynamics of helping relationship. Um, and so obviously in this helping relationship, something's happening or something's not happening, which either constructs the relationship, builds it up, or breaks it down. And he has talked about how the helper is looked upon by the client as the expert who has all the answers, sometimes even a messiah or deliverer. That, okay, we're going to wash our hands off, we're going to pay the fee to the client, to the consultant, and have the consultant come in and do all the work. And I think what I found really refreshing as I was reading Shine was that sometimes one of the most difficult things for a consultant is to get off that self-imposed pedestal and or self-created pedestal, and get to the level of the client. And in his work, he talks about a little bit, um, and as writing there, easy to fall into the victim, rescuer, persecutor dynamic. That's nice. And Anna, if you want to just say a little bit about that, I'd appreciate it. I'm going to unmute you. Yeah, go ahead, Anna.
Well, very often somebody comes and says, I need help, or what should I do? And as they begin to crawl out of the hole, they turn you into that persecutor because they want you to rescue them, which means they're putting the monkey on your back. They're putting the pressure on you that you're the one responsible. And again, coming back to the coaching ideas, it's really hard sometimes as a coach or as a consultant not to take that on, or we come in because we think we are the expert, and then after a while, excuse me, the relationship it becomes unhealthy, and now the person who was here to help or save me does become the one who's causing me pain.
Aha. Wow. Did everybody hear that? I mean, that's a very important aspect there. The moment you feel that the consultant has all the answers, and when it is a breakdown that happens, if you don't feel that the consultant was successful in getting the job done, you blame it all on the consultant.
Or even if the consultant, and sometimes especially if the consultant is successful, then the consultant gets in the way of my success.
Aha. Very interesting. Wonderful. Thank you. Let's see. Stephanie, let me give it to you. Just 1 second here. Yes, Stephanie, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to agree and add to the most recent comments. I think that what we're talking about in a way is balance in the relationship between the helper and the helped, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
That when you can navigate that relationship so that you remain in balance, then no one falls into the role of the expert and no one falls into the role of the delivered.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the real helping can happen and the relationship is most effective.
Yeah, but Stephanie, don't you think that sometimes that is the hardest thing to do?
Yeah, it is.
It is. My experience has been, uh, it's the hardest, probably the hardest thing to do in my consulting practice. When I get out there and say, once I've bid for a piece of work and all that, and unconsciously they're thinking, okay, we are paying you the fee. You determine what the problem is, and then, of course, you fix the problem. We're paying you these big bucks to make it happen.
Yeah, and I think at every step you have to, like Shine says, force yourself to share the problem.
Right. And so if I were to look at the client and say, hey, can you share what your problem is? And they might give you the problem, but the Shine says that may not really be the problem. So what I see as a presenting problem may actually not be a presenting problem. There may be something hidden, something very obscure that I'm not able to see because I'm looking at what the client's telling me. So that aspect I think is very important. As you guys read this, work a little bit more, and we engage with this a little bit more, and we get into case studies and such down the road, you'll see that that is such an important dynamic. So if we do nothing else, if we understand the deeper dynamics of the helping relationship, I think we'll make Ed Schein smile, because that is what he always talks about, is understand the dynamics of the helping relationship. Okay. And as I said here, what process consultation is not, it is not an occupation or a full-time job. It's not as though we are going out there, this is what we do, what I do for a living. Process consultation is not what you do for a living. It's not a full-time job. It's certainly not unilateral advice or pontification. And it definitely is not organizational therapy. So, I know Sonia had just written something. So let me just unmute Sonia. Sonia, go ahead. You were saying something there, right?
Oh, I was just commenting that I see the helping relationship as co-creative,
Mm-hmm.
a very fluid process.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that on occasion, when you initially start into a relationship with a client,
Right.
there is a foundation that's set as to the expectation of
Mm-hmm.
what's going to be done and how you're going to work. And for me, it's always been something where it is agreed upon there's a co-creative relationship that's going to be happening.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be questioning,
Mm-hmm.
and you continue to ask those questions to reveal
Right.
more of what the issue is. Because a lot of times, I think, as has been stated prior, that the initial reason why you're in or why you think you're in is not really why you're there. And to delve deeper into those relationships, to really glean the information that needs to come out so that you can begin to assess and get a better understanding of what's going on. But I think it's really important, what's really foundationally important, is to set that expectation at the beginning and to build that relationship. And I think part of the problem when we first go in is the building that trust. And she talks about building that relationship based on trust, and that's hard to do initially,
Right.
just coming in. So
Just
I see it as a co-creative relationship, and it's very fluid. It ebbs and flows.
uh-huh. So let me ask you a question, Sonia. So when you're just the client for the first time, you're talking, you just gotten the contract, and how are you setting the expectation there? I mean, that's what I want to understand better. How are you setting the stage for this co-creation?
Well, in the initial meeting,
Mm-hmm.
I explain how I work and what my process is. Because for me, it's not about getting a contract so I can make some more money. It's about
Right.
am I the match for this client? Can this client and I work together?
Uh-huh.
And that has to, I mean, you have to be able to, as my husband usually says, you can't be afraid to walk away. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's to set the expectation in the beginning and get that buy-in that that's the type of relationship that they are going to be able to have, or the organization is interested in having as you move forward. Because when that breaks down, if that's your manner, of course we all have a lot of tools in our toolbox, and we can come out of that helping relationship at any time and become, I'm going to tell you what I think you need to do.
Right.
But that is not how I work. So I set that at the very beginning, and we have an understanding of that's my process, lots of questioning. We co-create this, finding a solution to the problem. And that's, to me, it's worked that way from the very beginning. I've had several times when, once we got into the situation, there was a little pushback. Well, not a little. I've had times when there was a lot of
I was going to
pushback.
say, little, hey,
No,
what
there's
planet
been
are
a
you
lot of
working on?
pushback because you're not always working with that same person that you're having the initial meeting with.
Right.
It starts to spread into other departments and other personalities. And I think it's really important to be able to go with the flow, sort of, to get a sense of who you're working with and how
Mm-hmm.
best to communicate with that person.
Interesting.
And someone mentioned earlier something about understanding the culture. Right? It's further up. Someone made a comment about depends on the culture. You can't really have that relationship in a more hierarchical culture. I think one of the participants typed something to that nature. So it just, you have to be a good fit. And for me, it's never about, oh my gosh, I've got to get this contract because it's about the money. I think at some point, if you're really going to get into a helping relationship, you need to understand it's about service. And it's about what can I do for this organization, and are they willing to meet me to get it done?
Wonderful, wonderful. Well said. Well said. Very well said. That's certainly in line with what Shine has been saying. Let me just take it to Payal. I know Payal, you was trying to say something here, and hopefully she can tell us what you said. Go ahead, Payal.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I think I agree with what Sonja was saying. In my experience, the first meeting, if it's a new client, is never the meeting which will kind of get you the final assignment as such, because that's the time when you're spending time with the client, sharing with him your experience, your approach, and quite often, while the client may get attuned to the idea, he may be uncertain of it. And in my experience, it makes sense to leave the client with that thought. And then when the client really needs that, that's when he will remember you. And I have experienced instances where a client has come back to me after a few months. And I'm also surprised that that has taken shape that way.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And and I also think the client senses the genuinity of the person as a consultant, because it's very difficult for us when we are going as a consultant to say I don't know. And quite often when I meet new people, the question that they ask is, how will you help us resolve this? And what is the solution that you can offer us? And this happens in the first meeting.
Yes.
So initially it was difficult for me to say I don't know, but I think it also makes sense to say this to the client, I don't know, because you really don't know.
You hit upon something that you almost, it was rolling right off my tongue, and you said it.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things, if you look at
Yeah.
the last bullet point on this slide, it is assumed that the
Yeah.
consultant knows more about the client's problem than the client does herself. Okay,
Right.
we oftentimes get into this trap. Okay, the consultant is saying, you know, you're the expert, you bring out what it is that we are struggling with. We are struggling, we're
Mm.
telling you we're struggling, you will give you all the resources, you find out what's happening. And they're trying to get off the hook, because it's like transferring all that onto you. Now you're taking the burden, you've got the entire monkey on your back. Okay, and you're trying to
Right.
struggle, and they're saying, okay, you let us know if you need our feedback. All right. And you
Right.
touched upon a very important aspect, Pyle, which I was going to talk about in a second, which Shine talks about in great detail, is a consultant's ability to get in touch with his or her ignorance
Yes.
of not knowing what's going on.
Hmm.
Okay. Without any judgment, not knowing, to be able to say, look, I don't know what your situation here is.
True.
I don't know what's going to be happening. We don't know how this is going to unfold. And
Right.
and in the next session, I'll be doing a sharing a competency. It's called negative capability, which is a wonderful competency to have if you're a process consultant and do process consulting of any kind anywhere. It's how to
Mm-hmm.
hold the paradox and how to be comfortable with little knowledge, with half knowledge, without the temptation to jump in and fix the client's problem. Okay, because we are all
Yes.
guilty of trying to do that, because there's only we're working against strict deadlines and everything else. And so the idea is they judge us by how much we know, how much we can get done, and how quickly we can get it done.
Yes.
And here so it's kind of like a tussle going on between you and the client. The client is saying get it all done, and I'm saying I want to step back. I want to see, I don't know, I'm not ready yet. Okay, so you can imagine the dynamics that get played out there in that situation. So next session we'll be doing on negative capability, which will also give you guys some time to catch up on the readings with Ed Schein and all that. It's just a phenomenal competency to have, and many of you, some of you here have already uh, heard about that, worked with me in many webinars on that. I know Somali, Balaji, we all read that, but there's some that don't know about negative capability. I think it'd be a very useful competency for you to understand and get your arms around. So I want to take it to Anna for a second. I know Anna has written something, but I'd like her to elaborate that, if she may. Anna, would you like to share a little bit more about what you were trying to say there?
I don't know, what did I say? What comment are you referring to?
Ah, you're saying so much out there that I'm trying to keep track of. So this idea, you're saying about the idea of co-creating solutions which the client owns.
Yeah, and I don't have the answers. If I'm working with you, you have the answers. What I'm going to do is work as a reflective partner to help you find them. But there's also an element of creating new knowledge between us or with all of the participants in a dialogue, in the action. We create new knowledge because sometimes none of us or neither of us have the answer. But as we probe and as we work together, we create those solutions. We create that new knowledge, which we can then apply. But ultimately, it's the client that owns it. It's not my responsibility to see that it's acted upon. I'm there to help. I'm really there serve, to serve, not
Yes.
to be the one carrying the torch.
Yeah. So did everybody hear that? It is the client who should, I'm going to say should, own the problem, which they often don't. That's the
Now,
issue
now
there.
I don't use the word should because one of my ground rules is not to should on others, and I don't
Oh, no,
like
no.
people
I
to
was meaning,
on me.
I obviously would not say this to a client, but I'm just saying
I know.
I mean, I'm just saying it sort of facetiously here that they should own the problem, which they don't. Um, I mean, we're expecting that they own up and say, look, this is my problem. This is not your problem. So let me thanks a lot for sharing that, Anna. And let me just go to Suman. I know Suman was wanting to say something. Go ahead, Suman. You're unmuted.
Yeah, thanks. As I had written, for me, I look at any client requirement as an opportunity for me to possibly learn about something new, learn or relearn about something. So the moment I go from that space, I'm not under pressure to help, but I'm willing to then look at what they need with a lot more openness. I can listen to them much more, and the co creation becomes that much easier, which leads me to be able to serve them better. And when that happens, I really don't need to next think about when the next contract gets signed. And that's a beautiful experience. Thanks, Anil.
Okay. Okay. Good. And Dharmesh has a divergent viewpoint, which I'd like to give to him, definitely, because it's not about homogeneity in this group. I want to hear others' perspectives too. Dharmesh, go ahead.
Thank you, Anil. No, like I just mentioned in my comment, the whole talk about the monkey of the problem being discussed is making me uncomfortable because I think the whole aspect of helping relationship is not about the helper, but about being focus of the client. So yes, I may not be an expert, but I don't want to project that I'm not an expert because I may be wrong, but it is because you may receive something as a client which is not apt for you. So I think if the focus shifts from us to the client, I think the whole dynamics change, and perhaps that's where what Payal was trying to kind of say was that people would sense the genuinity of your intent. I think that would come across very well if the focus shifts from me to the client.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's a good thought. Thank you so much for sharing that because I think it enriches the dialogue, I think. So let me give it to you, Alan. Alan wanted to say something in response to what you had written. Go ahead, Alan. Alan? Okay, I don't believe he can hear us. All right, we'll come back to him. Let's see. Somebody else was saying Nancy. Yes. Just 1 second. Let me see. Let me find you and unmute you here. Let's see this. Okay. Go ahead, Nancy. Nancy? All right. She's not there either. Hey, Nancy, can you hear us?
I'm here.
Okay,
And
go ahead. I just
yes,
wanted to,
I
yeah, I
had it
just
on mute.
wanted you to.
I guess it was just, yeah, I meant bring up the area of just tacit knowledge, and that oftentimes when a consultant comes in and begins to address ways to look at tacit knowledge about the organization, which is this is the way things really work around here, and also a language for how the group operates. I think you're opening up for the group ways for them to begin talking about what's actually their experience. So they're providing the information and they're actually putting together the pieces, but you're helping in a way with the language that they can begin to construct that.
Mm-hmm.
This happens, in addition to the other areas that have been mentioned, the importance of safety in the container. And so there's a lot of other work that goes with it. Certainly, how you come across as being authentic and genuine. But I think in sort of relaying that language of how group processes work.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Is an opening.
Okay. Thank you. Somali, did you want to add something to this? Okay, I guess not. I thought she had mentioned something there. All right, so let's see. I want to just read this comment that Alan had written, of course, to everybody. Dharmesh, I feel that your comments are consistent with the PC values. Not taking the monkey is definitely not about the consultant, but about managing the relationship when it doesn't happen. Wow, that's nice. I had actually unmuted Alan, and Alan, for some reason, was not able to talk. Alan, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, go ahead, Alan.
Can you
What
hear
did you
me?
say? Yeah,
Can
we
you?
can hear you.
Oh, you can hear
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
Great, great, great. What I was thinking about is in regard to the taking the monkey or not taking the monkey. It's all about establishing, as many of the members here have said, the initial relationship. And one of the first things I learned when I read the process consultation book back in, I'm going to say it was '84.
Mm-hmm.
What struck me is so critically different was the focus on the consultant and the client is equals in forming a relationship and working on trying to agree what the problem set is.
Mm-hmm.
So before you start talking about, oh, we need solutions, like, well, what is the problem? In the same way, the coaches want to know what is the goal. So I think Schein was really, his work was a precursor to the coaching movement because it created that it's about creating this thought space in which the learning can occur.
Right.
Just like a negative capability, you're holding a space, but this is holding a space in relation, an active, open, conscious space in which the learning can occur. And if you don't establish those initial relationship aspects of equality, and I'm here to learn, I'm here to help you learn, it's really, to me, it's if you tell the client, if you're the expert and you tell the client the answer, they can either listen or not. The wisdom of it is irrelevant if they're not ready to hear it, or it's not something, it's hard to do, it's hard to think about, which is the whole reason why you're there. Is because they're in a quandary. But we don't know what the quandary is until we start a relationship and start a conversation. Right. So it's a great methodology for establishing, focusing on the relationship, which is that, and then when you build the trust and learning how the two of you work together, then it opens up all kinds of learning possibilities.
Right, thanks. And Alan, wouldn't you agree that negative capability is that one competency that can really, really be very helpful in this helping relationship?
I would, and I've worked with you over the years on that.
Oh, yes.
And learned so much about it that it's I think that all of us in this field have a sense of, once we get past the negative um, uh, appellation of what, because it's not anything negative, it's simply not active. It's an as you know,
Yes.
inactive process that allows, you're creating a space, whether you're doing it in speaking, or you're doing it in speaking, thinking, and quiet. You need that that learning. And I can't remember who was talking about the tacit learning.
Sonia's point about co-creating, and a lot of others have also said about co-creating this space
Mm-hmm.
in the
Yeah,
helping relationship.
it's all about that, and that should be an enjoyable and fulfilling process that's not without challenges or difficulty, and there's always going to be that discomfort. That's what we're fighting. We're fighting our own discomforts by recognizing our own
ignorance
issues, or not just our ignorance, but our ignorance about our issues.
Yeah.
The less we're honest with ourselves about where our ego pops up and wants to tell them and wants to be right. If we don't constantly keep that in check, we're not going to be doing PC. We're going to be doing expert consultant. Because as soon as our ego jumps in, it's not about the relationship anymore.
You're right. Thanks a lot for sharing that, Alan. I appreciate it. Let me just go. Somebody else was wanting to say something here. I don't figure out. Yeah, Seema, you wanted to say something there? Are you there, Seema? Okay, I guess not. All right. So let's see. So we'll remain in chat. Anuradha. Okay, so Anuradha, you've been trying to say something here. I just want to make sure you have the mic. Go ahead, Anuradha. Yeah, Anu, can you hear me?
No. I was just yes, Anil.
Okay, go ahead.
I can.
You
I was
were,
just.
You were putting some comments.
Point?
Yeah, I thought just you could also put some voice to the comments. It'd be nice.
I was when I heard Alan talking, I was just thinking of also being in touch and admitting our own inadequacies as a consultant. And there are so many that I come up with, I face with, and then so if I add that to the process consultant's approach of admitting that I don't know, but I don't know somewhere.
Right. That is very interesting, and that's why I said that we'll talk about the negative capability competency in our next webinar, because that's an important competency to have. If you want to create this helping space, helping relationship, whatever you want to call it, is just a very, very crucial competency to have. So we'll do that. I also just wanted to quickly go to Dr. Anuradha. Anuradha, you have another Anuradha there. Anuradha, let's see. Oberoi.
I know Anuradha Prasad. Hi.
Hi, Anuradha. I just wanted to give it to you just to make sure you're sitting very quietly there. How are you doing?
For a change, yes.
So what thoughts are coming up for you, Anuradha, on this?
Because I was trying to see if I could find an answer to something very bizarre which has happened to me last week. I was working with a consulting organization which they sent me a transcript of their discussion with the client and told me to give a proposal for the entire OD project. I was absolutely shocked, and of course I refused the work. But I was left wondering if that also happens these days. That I mean, is it on? Is it something which happens regularly, or it was something which happened only to me? Well, very, very surprised, very, very taken aback. Wow. I've not heard any one of you saying that this can also happen in a client system. I am only hearing you say that what would be helping them and what would be not helping them. But what would be the initial contact with them? I mean, to my mind, sitting down with them face to face would be the most important part of starting a consulting assignment.
Right. Yes. So thanks for sharing that. Let's see. Okay, so if we've gone with this, I just want to proceed a little bit further to Anna's. Let me just go up to Anna real quick if she wanted to say something here. Anna, would you like to add something to this before we move on?
No, I don't need to add vocally. I just was putting my comment in, and it was in response to something that Balaji had said.
Yeah, Balaji, right. Balaji, right. Mm-hmm.
A few comments up that, and I think, well, I am talking now. I do think consultants are often seen as outsiders, and that's part of our value because we don't have a vested interest, or we don't, ideally, that is ideally, we don't have ulterior motives.
Right.
But we also are there not because we want to see the change so much as we're there as enablers. We're there to help people create the future they want, not that I want.
Right.
That's it.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay, so let me just move forward, and let's talk about this. Let's just ruminate about this power differential between the consultant and the client. And Schein talks about two processes: the psychological and the social dynamics that happen in the relationship. So he talks about the imbalance that is created by a top-down, flawed consulting model, giving rise to psychological dynamics and defenses. And these dynamics, overt and covert, must be understood and addressed before the help can be given based on candor and openness. But if the openness and candor are simply touted and espoused, but not culturally sanctioned by the organization, it triggers a new set of sociological defenses and dynamics. It's quite a mouthful, so I'm going to give it to all the experts here to discuss on this. So if you want to just share something here, just let me know in the chat box, because this is really, really an important slide here. It's populated, but it's a very, very important slide. Would somebody want to say something about this? Okay, so Suman, you wanted to say, go ahead, Suman.
I think it's about setting expectations, sometimes overtly and sometimes not so overtly. It's about understanding what can I do, like earlier so many people said, and stating it somewhere. That's what I see as the slide. Thanks, Anil.
Okay. Okay, so Anna wanted to share a small story with us from a consulting practice. So I'm going to give it to Anna. Hopefully she can give us some interesting anecdote here about this. Go ahead, Anna.
Well, this is something that's been fairly recent in work here in my agency, which is the Federal Aviation Administration, where we do a lot of work with facilities. A facility would be an air traffic control center, a tower, an air traffic control facility. And we'd gone into a facility where they were having lots and lots of problems. We work with the entire team, not just a manager. In this case, the manager, and this gets at the power struggle. The manager really was a big, big, big contributor to the problems there, and yet and therefore pretty much refused to cooperate and to participate. And yet, through the diligence and working with the team of people who make up this facility, changes, very positive changes began to happen. Those changes, which is changing the culture, despite the person who has that titular head, the top manager, it began to change the corporate culture. That manager recently has come around and now wants very much to become a part of this collaborative process, because the manager has come to understand, has learned through essentially observation and experience, even though it wasn't voluntary, has learned the value and now wants to become a part of it. I think that's really an important aspect of the power differential and of coming in as equals and of coming in as helpers, but who have great strength to almost transfer to the group.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And it's interesting to understand the difference between the psychological and the social dynamics there. Okay. With the two different things happening, right, Anna? What Ed Schein is
Yes,
talking about in his work.
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, there could be psychological defenses and social defenses there.
Yeah. And on multiple levels, not just between the OD practitioners coming in to help, and of course, senior leadership outside and above this particular facility who are saying, go help them because they're in bad shape. Right. There were lots of dynamics at play. So you can't even talk about power differential on a one-to-one basis because it is a complex set of relationships that we are immersed or involved with.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. That was a nice illustration there on that. Thank you. Let's see. I think Terry wanted to say something here. Terry, is Terry here now? Terry's gone. Okay. Let's see. Shipra, I'm unmuting you. Shipra, do you want to say something? Oh, Shipra cannot speak. I'm sorry. She has a mic problem there. All right. So somebody's got to talk. Let's give it to Stephanie. Steph, go ahead. Stephanie?
Hi.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I had to pick on you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have anything to say about this specific topic.
No, just in your consulting work, Stephanie, do you often come across or sometimes come across the psychological defenses and the sociological defenses?
Definitely. Mm-hmm. And I think they can be intertwined to the point where they're really hard to separate and
yes.
and hard to put your finger on where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of that for me goes back to the relationship. And what I heard, I think Anna saying earlier, is that she was able to establish a relationship with the people in the system, if not the leadership.
Right.
And that through that relationship, she was able to help. And eventually that changed the larger psychological dynamics and culture of the organization.
Right. Right. And those of you that are familiar, and I'm sure all of you are, or at least most of you are, with the work of Dr. Chris Argyris, will know that he was the one who really started to talk about years and years ago, at least 3 decades ago, about the difference between the espoused values and the practiced values in an organization. And so what they say and what they do, there's a difference there. And he talks about the single loop learning and the double loop learning in organizations, if all of you are familiar with that part, where the single loop learning is, okay, what is said, nobody questions, because again, that's like the expert talking. The leader knows it all, and nobody can ask those questions. Nobody can challenge the leadership. On the other hand, the double loop learning is about questioning ourselves and questioning others. Hey, why are we doing this? Right, Stephanie?
Definitely.
Sometimes those questions in an organization are not asked, and everything is swept under the rug, or at least most of it is swept under the rug, that are difficult issues to discuss.
And I think one of the power not only of process consultation, but OD work in general, is our ability to surface that and look it in the face and then deal with it and change it.
Yep. Well, thank you. I'm sorry, I just jumped on you. I wanted somebody to say something. Thanks a lot for taking the opportunity to talk. Thank you. I appreciate it. Anybody else would like to say something? Sonia, okay, just let me give it to you. Sonia, why didn't you just Say it.
I didn't really. I just was just typing a thought process of um, taking the client or group through that understanding of um, things that they closely hold as subjective, and be
Yes.
able to really massage and deep go deeper into that thought process of, why do we hold that subjective, to move in and out, continually moving it in and out of that subjective to the objective as we question and find new ways or new thought processes that are able to come from those probing discussions where we are not the expert, we are just facilitating shared learning and understanding in the process.
Right. But in your work, sorry, if in your work you discovered that there is a huge disconnect between what is espoused and what is practiced, and what is being practiced or not done because it is or culturally not sanctioned by the organization. So people are afraid to talk because it's not culturally sanctioned.
Exactly. And I've just had an organization that I work with where that was the case. I sat in a meeting with the manager, this was the government, and he was telling me that they work so hard to get the culture they currently have. And having had opportunity to really get involved in the culture and meet with and have exposure to various departments, or 26 different departments in this organization, working with the front lines in the organization, it became very clear that the culture that he thinks they have, that they espouse to have, does not actually exist within the organization globally. And that people are what they really have is a suppressive, retaliatory culture. But he is not aware of that. And so that is exactly the point that you've made, is that it's an espoused value or an espoused way of doing business, but not, in essence, is not what's going on at all. People are literally afraid to speak because they will be retaliated against outside of that meeting.
Right.
So, we're constantly fighting that battle in organizations that have those types of cultures.
Right. And
it's difficult.
Right. And if the organization culture, go ahead. I'm sorry. You were saying.
I mean, it's very difficult to break that down and to get them to understand, because at that point you have the management thinking one thing's going on when something totally different is going on. And then to get them to see that, here comes the next problem. They now have to own that as managers.
Right.
And they don't want to take on that responsibility of this, is this what I've created?
Right.
And take ownership of that. So that's a very slippery slope to navigate relationally. When you're the outside person coming to relay this information to them, that what they think they have is not exactly what they have.
Right.
And how have they, what can we now, how do we now address this issue?
Right.
And when it's rampant, I'm talking 26 different departments, 1,600, a lot of people.
And when people are not able to verbalize their anxieties because it's not culturally sanctioned by the organization to be open and be candid, what happens is it gets suppressed, and over a period of time gets repressed. And
absolutely,
social defensiveness.
Absolutely.
And social defensiveness, that the whole new ball of wax out there, okay, it becomes even more difficult to tackle.
Very difficult.
Yeah. So thank you. That was very valuable, Sadia. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm just going to go to Dharmesh for a second. He's been wanting to say something. Let's see. Because we want to go ahead, Dharmesh. You've written this. So would you just mind sharing it with us?
Sure. Yeah. So I was just reading about it, and I think the power differential that is being mentioned out here is in terms of the difference in status, and from a social neuroscience perspective, status is very, very important aspect of social dynamics, and any any perceived lowering of status creates a threat response and a reaction which is very defensive towards that particular threat. So I know Dr. Schein mentions the relationship automatically puts the helper into one up position and the client into one down position and makes the client very vulnerable. and perhaps it is this dynamic that needs to be understood and addressed in terms of creation of trust before you actually begin any helping relationship.
Wow, that is a wonderful, wonderful feedback. And I wish we could dwell a little bit more about that if everybody heard that. And of course, you also have given it in writing over here in your chat, so we can look at both that. So this you've really honed in on the power differential, because some things are beyond our control, regardless of what I say to a client. That, look, I'm not the expert. I'm on a level playing field, and we're going to be co-creating this and all that. But we all know that somewhere the client is looking up to me to solve those problems. And I think one of the hardest things is to get over that barrier. Okay. Um, and that's why getting in touch with my own ignorance, and to be able to, when I say ignorance, I just mean I may not have all the knowledge about the system. And if I am conveying to the client that I don't have the knowledge about what's going on here, and I need your help in understanding it and owning up to whatever's happening in the organization so we can work on this together. So, I mean, it all sounds really easy, but the reality is they will sooner or later turn to you and say, hey, listen, what do you think we should do? If the client had all the answers to all the issues, they would not hire the services of a consultant. Right? And that's what I'm saying. I mean, so you run into a situation where you're called upon to answer the questions, to bring to the table what it is that they should be doing to improve the organizational effectiveness. So how do we solve that? That dilemma is my question there. Okay, so Anna, do you want to share something with us on that? In your experience with consulting?
No, it's just many of us either live in or work with very class-conscious societies, and
yes.
that class comes from the corporate. So in my world, if I'm in the Veterans Administration, for example, then the doctors and the people who are at the top in terms of the medical centers are the first-class citizens, and everybody else is lower. Or if it's the State Department, the foreign service folks are the ones who are the first class, and everybody else is lesser. And the Federal Aviation Administration, it's the air traffic controllers and so on. And so that was what that comment was coming from. That you can never be considered as powerful or as having the power if you don't come from the right class. So we're always disadvantaged and have to essentially earn the respect and the trust. And most of the time, the way we do that is by being very genuinely focused on what is it you want to do. I'm not here to tell you, I'm here to help you. And as trite as that sounds, when people begin to see that that's very genuine, and it's very much where we're coming from, and that we are, in fact, helping them, then the relationship changes and the power shifts. But it isn't that one becomes more powerful, it's that we are willing to share power.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I want to turn it over to Pam. Pam, you've done a lot of work with the hospital systems. I know you're on the board there also at some hospital. Would you like to share something along these lines?
Yes, and also I just wrote a note relating to some of what I think Anna was saying, because I also have for 10 years been working with the U.S. Department of Commerce, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, 12,000 person organization, large, where I see some of what she just mentioned appearing, over and over again. And it has to do very much with what is built into research and development, and I think maps to healthcare, and that is a hierarchy within a hierarchy of a number of things in the system. And so consulting through crossing those divides in an organization, you are ever so aware of the reinforcement of top-down in so many different ways. So healthcare, though, I'm on the board and with New York Presbyterian Hospital, which used to be Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, and been on their board for quite some time, and have also wrote a grant from the ODN to come and do some work. This was almost a decade ago with the medical team at that point, who were in the process of trying to expand the medical team so that they were working across more disciplines, because they were very siloed. So, and what I think was very obvious to me is it's not only MD versus, MD, PhD, just the ranking, the hierarchy of who when people are in the room. So, in medicine, those who not only have a medical degree but also a degree, a PhD that allows them to do research, certainly have a leg up, in the system. So then you're having you have internist versus specialist.
Right.
And you have the medical technicians who are becoming more and more specialized in their work and who are non-MDs but carry sort of plethora of master's level degrees.
Wow.
And then you have all parts in between for patient care. And then, of course, you have the executive team, which is usually represented by a medical physician and then medical doctor and then others. But the bottom line, and then they want you to come in. They had asked me to work with them on bringing in a team to consult when the hospital was expanding in a very large way.
Wow.
And here I think the consultant really has an opportunity. I mean, this is where the one-on-one, there is the system dynamic that is, overarching and formidable. At the same time, I do think when Schein talks about it's about the relationship, never forget that between the helper and the client that one has to remain focused on. It really does define, in many ways, success of process consultation. And if you can, as people, the trust factor, as that grows, quite frankly, some of the consultants were able to bring in one-on-one, very difficult at the large group level, to bring in, some of the cultural dynamics that were decreasing the ability to have these candid conversations about change in this instance, in this situation. So I think this is where I think the consultant really has a real leveraging point in terms of relationship with that client, will yield, I think, more knowledge for both about what is going on in the system. And if that relationship is rather vulnerable and weak and cannot develop to certain points of openness, then I think, the system is one.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, my
interesting. Thank you so much. Suman, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to share experiences working with family-run businesses in India where there are 3 generations involved in making decisions about the business, which has a different kind of impact on creating the culture, having a common language. And I initially experienced that they wanted me to call the shots when the 3 generations could not sit together and decide what they wanted. And initially I would just say, look, I'm around. First sort this out for yourselves, please. And later I realized that even to have that conversation, possibly they needed some help. And I saw that beautiful transition happen when I understood that I had possibly some role in helping them sort that out. So I just wanted to share that this was one of my experiences. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Somebody want to go next? I've been seeing a lot of comments here. Let's see. Let's take it to Vanita. Let's see. Vanita, would you want to say something? Vanita?
Yeah, I think I just want to second Suman.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to second Suman.
Okay.
And regarding these working with the 3 generations of family business, it becomes such a tricky thing, because again, who is the person who has done the contract with you in all the 3 generations? there's a lot of dynamics as a consultant which you need to manage.
Okay, so Vinita, you run an outbound training firm, right?
Yes, we run an outbound firm, but our work is also in the area of OD and coaching.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. That's great. That's excellent. And I know Alan has been wanting to say something very eagerly. Alan, go ahead. You've been sitting so quietly. Alan? Alan is doing sidebars. Alan, can you hear me? Okay, we'll go to him next. Let's see. Anuradha? Anuradha, would you like to say something?
Are you talking for Anuradha Prasad?
Yes.
Hello?
The other Anuradha is gone.
Okay. No, but I see she's sending some comments here.
Oh, really?
Okay, let me, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
But,
I thought she had left here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was wanting to share experience of working with organizations which are, say Dalit organizations in India, and where I come in as seemingly the person from the higher, so-called higher caste, right? And so there already a social differences have been set there. And from there comes a lot of psychological differences, which one really doesn't know what to do about and how to work on that. So I was just wanting to share how from social differences, the psychological differences comes up. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's maybe a little different than what the others were talking about.
Okay. Okay.
I'm talking of social sector organizations.
All right. So let me just go back to Alan again. Alan, are you able to hear us, or can you say something? Alan? Okay. Yes. Maybe Alan's busy. Okay. All right. So we've got about let's see, 10 minutes to go before we wind up the session. And I'll just open it up to anybody who's not spoken. Let me see. Is Leslie, are you on? Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't think I have anything to add at this point. I apologize. I was a little bit late. I had the time wrong on my
Don't worry about it. I just saw you there, and you had not spoken, so I figured that I'll just ask you. Thank you.
Yes.
Aaron, you would you like to say something, my friend? Oh, Aaron's not here. He may have. Okay. Anybody else? I mean, it's a free forum right now, and let's talk about whatever you want to say in the last 10 minutes we have left together. Sure. Anuradha, just 1 second, Dr. Anuradha. I'll open that to you. Let's see. Yes, go ahead. Anuradha, Oberoi?
Well, this is regarding family. Yeah, this is regarding the family-run businesses.
Yes.
I have done considerable amount of work with them, and I the uniqueness about them, which I find in India, is that there may be some handicap with regard to how fast they will incorporate change, but at the same time they are very eager when they see change in their next rung, and that kind of snowballs down the line. So there is a beauty in working in family run big businesses, doing OD with them. It's very satisfying.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Does anybody else? Okay. Payal, just 1 minute. I'll give it to you. Okay. Go ahead, Payal.
Right. So I wanted to share on what Suman shared, and we're talking about family-run businesses. One of the things I've experienced in our initial meetings, it's very important to know who is the client. One is obviously the client who's a sponsor client who's paying you for your consulting work. The other is the actual client, I think, and also the decision maker. Because quite often in my experience in family-run businesses, the young guy may get you in, but it is the person who started the organization who's really set the culture, the trend, and that's where it comes from. So it's very important to get family members involved in work. And I can share an experience of working with a family-run business. In this case, the father had asked me to come on board, and he had 3 children. And all 3 children were equally important stakeholders and decision makers in the organization. So he wanted to transition the organization to a professional organization, and saw that there were some things which were not helping them grow and take more work. But it was the younger generation which wasn't okay with this entire setup, saying that they wanted to stick to the old culture of of how the organization had been. Irrespective, at this moment, it didn't matter if the business wasn't really coming in that much, but it was the culture that was really what made people stick around for so long. So as a consultant, I've also learned my lessons that it's important to identify the decision makers, the various stakeholders, and also the difference between your sponsor client and the client who's actually going to be involved in the work.
Okay. So how were you able to handle that transition for them?
So one of the things that I did is, while I spoke to the father, I shared the approach. The conversation was left open at that moment because just one of the children was initially okay with doing that. And then we left the conversation open. It was after around 7 to 8 months that one of the eldest daughters got back to me saying, "I think now is the time we can work." Because I think this is making more sense. So my first thing that I shared with her was that while this is what you say, what is everybody else saying? So she had, in her own way, got the family members, that is the family members involved, to see the need for the assignment. So my entry into the system then happened when they had agreed that this is what they need to do.
Oh, okay. All right. That's helpful to share. Let's see. Anybody else want to go before we end the session? We've got about 5 minutes here. Let's see. I haven't. If I'm missing anybody here. All right. Well, if nobody wants to go, I'm just going to suggest some closing comments. Thank you so very much, and thank you for bearing with this few technological glitches. I've been doing these. I've done hundreds of these webinars, and there's not one that I can say that goes perfect. Okay, I am very pleased with the GoToMeeting platform. I think uh, and of course, the proof is in the pudding. We'll see how the recording turns out to be, but it's definitely better in my mind than the WebEx sessions we've had in terms of the voice clarity. Now, I know some of you've had some issues with audio, but that is expected because we've got different people working with different bandwidths around the world. So that is to be expected. And that's why we mute everyone so we can get a very good recording. The next session I want to devote to at least partly, if not the entire 90 minutes, to a overview of negative capability, which I'm sure many of you have either heard about or at least some have seen up close. But really, I'd like you to understand that competency a little bit more and hopefully to get some ideas from that and incorporate that in your work. Negative capability was an expression that was coined by the famous English romantic poet John Keats when he was only 25 years old. And it was in a letter to his brothers that he had used that expression, and really from that point on it's become huge and extrapolated into leadership, executive coaching, you name it, it's there in organizational world. You don't hear a lot about it, and it may sound very oxymoronish because if the words cancel each other out, negative and capability, so you'll learn a little bit about that in our next session. I'll try to send you something to read up on that before we actually get into that session. And I'll also give you a little bit of homework to do on portions of Schein's work. I know many of you have not been able to download the book because of whatever issues with internet, but we'll use the resources that we have all together, at least from that paper that I shared with you all. So with that, I must say thank you so very much to everyone for putting up with us and for sharing and participating so actively. It's really, really wonderful to have you on board. Thanks a lot. And goodbye. And I'll get the recording done and we'll send you the recording link. All right? Again, have a great day or a great night wherever you are. We'll catch up next Wednesday. Thank you.